Welcome back to Marlins 9, guys. I'm Jeremiah Geiger, and joining me for another State of the Marlins episode is the one and only Joe Frisaro. Joe, how you doing?
Jeremiah, how you doing, buddy? It's been a while, but I'm
It's
sure
been
we'll catch up with a lots gone on since our last conversation.
a lot has got on. Last episode in July, right before the trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken. So the state of the Marlins, as this podcast series is called with you, a lot different. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of people gone. Um, but yeah, so just digging right into it from the beginning, Marlins trade deadline, trade away about a third of the roster. I mean, it was an overhaul from the beginning. De La Cruz gone, Jazz gone, bullpen pieces gone, Tanner Scott obviously gone, bringing a lot of prospects. But from the last time we talked, Joe, in July, before the deadline and now, has anything changed? What is kind of your perception surrounding this organization right now?
Uh, okay, the other night, Sunday, when they won, there was a moment in the game that was completely glossed over, but I thought it kind of catapulted, summarized the whole season. Kind of, you could have sum it up this way: Jesus Sanchez is intentionally walked,
I
but
know where you're going
doesn't
with this.
doesn't he goes 90 feet, he goes 85, 86 feet. First base coach John Jay is looking at him the whole time. And he's summoned back to the dugout for a pinch runner. And and I don't care, Skip could get mad at me, whatever. But you can talk about how prepared you are and all this other nonsense. But the player, the first base coach, and I know Skip after the game took the blame, which whatever. You know who didn't miss that?
Hmm.
Craig Counsell. He's like, the guy didn't touch first base. And I think that kind of summarized the whole season, but I get it. It was a rare win. Norby had a couple of hits, so no one was really going to go down the lane of fundamentals. But, to me, that spoke to the bigger picture. We are so wrapped up in the little minor wins that we could get. The guy gets up 5 runs, but all five might be one inning, and then you have 4 good innings. So we're like, oh, those 4 good innings were great. Norby had 2 hits and 6 extra base. I didn't even realize that they really considered this a stat or an achievement, but 6 extra base hits in 3 or 4 games, whatever the number is, makes him the greatest prospect, I guess, in Marlins history. There goes Miguel Cabrera, Hanley Ramirez, you know, uh, Giancarlo Stanton didn't have 6 extra base hits. My point being, until we get out of this chasing little wins along the way and recognize the basic fundamentals that when you walk, you go 90 feet and touch a base before you are subbed out, it's hard for me to take this seriously. And again, I'm kind of banging on Skip because and it's not his fault because he was giving this roster and this culture. But I think it kind of spoke to an organization that lives and dies 100% on analytics. That they could say all they want, their heads aren't in iPads, but apparently a 26, 27-year-old ball player doesn't touch first. And I'm going to give one little anecdote. I do a lot of high school baseball because, frankly, it's more interesting than our local team. And at the state championship, Stoneman Douglas won their fourth straight state title. They're playing a very good Windermere team. 2-2 game in extra innings in a game with more energy, more atmosphere, and a better played game than any Marlin games I've seen this year. And there's high school kids. And I'm videoing, and I have it all on my Man on Second YouTube channel. And the angle I had of Nick Diaz, right-handed hitter, right behind home plate in the stadium where the Twins play in Fort Myers. He's bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth in a tight game. Keep in mind, it's a 7-inning game, so we're in extra innings in high school. Diaz works a great at bat with 2 strikes, singles to left. And in my video, you could clearly see the first base coach for Stoneman Douglas pointing to first base and urging Nick Diaz to touch first base
Because of the
to
walk
get
off.
the game-winning hit. This is a walk-off hit. But the
Wow.
first base coach is pointing to first base in a high school championship game, and then they dogpiled him in the outfield as they won. Point being, the fundamentals weren't lost, and they weren't glossed over because the team won a rare game. And so, how's that for a rant to come right out of the chute?
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm all here for it, Joe. I mean, I saw that because I wasn't watching that particular game, and I saw that there was an intentional walk. Jesus Sanchez doesn't touch first base, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how are you not touching first base? I mean, on a walk, like to me, that's common sense. Playing baseball myself and watching the game as long as I have, but you're right. I mean, that kind of encapsulates the entire season. It's a sloppy season on the field. We talked about the little wins, and at this point, and I said this 2-3 months ago, which is sad to say, but I said
Mhm.
I don't care about the wins and losses right now because it's at the point the season was cooked, you know, back in May. You could argue back in April when they went 0-9, but the season has been
Yeah, that
shot
was
from the
over then.
get-go. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, so to see at this point, it's all about development. Like, I don't wanna see, with all due respect to Vidal Brujan and Otto Lopez, I don't wanna see them at bat, go up and hit. I wanna see Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, guys I think that can be a integral part of the future, start producing. And I really like Norby. You said the 6 extra base hits. I mean, that he can hit. He's got a really good hit tool. Stowers, I think, based on the peripherals with the bat speed, it's elite bat speed. He's another guy where I look at and I'm hopeful that the production continues. I think if
he
you
can't hit.
barrel, you
He
don't
can't
think
hit.
so?
I mean, no, no. He's a metric guy who. I mean, I think I might have told you the first at bat I saw, the first swing, he strikes out like pitch right down the middle. He's got a long swing. So what have they done with him? They've shortened it up where he just basically is choking up. So that 109 max exit velo, which got him here to begin with, because that's what they're looking at. They're
Yeah.
looking at that's what got Morlando to. They might as well not even have scouted Morlando all year playing high school ball because they just watched him take batting practice at the combine and he hit the ball 110 miles an hour and they drafted him based on that.
Right.
And it's like they're so consumed. We don't know if any of these guys have any hit tools. Then and they don't. And they can't tell you because anyone that can tell you, they fire. So, so again, and I don't want to rain on any dreams, and maybe Kyle Stowers will prove me wrong. I saw you had the little inside out swing. I mean, it's like you get enough at bats, you're gonna
I
put the
mean,
ball in play every now and then. But when you're Kane at a 40% rate, and now you're choking up, and your average exit velo is basically league average because trying to literally put the bat in the ball is seems to be the approach with him. And I get it, you might say, but how many of those players really pan out? He's like 26 or whatever. I mean, not that he can't, and I get that aspect, but that's what they're smitten by. They're smitten by a metric.
yeah.
Whether it's they couldn't stand Xavier Edwards.
Yeah.
He was no part of any plans except for he hit 350 whatever in Jacksonville. Everybody else was gone. So they're like, why not? And I don't know how good Xavier. I like Xavier. He's a North Broward prep kid. He's a Broward kid. I'm a big believer in South Florida kids because they play with edge like you wouldn't believe, which I think the sport really needs. And in our backyard, the guys who literally are taking guys out on slides still when no one's allowed to do that anymore, and guys who are, and he's scrappy. And all this kid's been told is he can't play. But I'm not sure he's a everyday, 350 type batting average guy. But he's a big leaguer, and then what happens is he gets in there, and now I hear internally, oh, he's going to win a batting title. They didn't believe in him.
Oh,
They didn't
no,
believe it. He had to go
100%
out
they
there.
didn't
He had to
because
go in. He had to go in there and just kind of do it. And look, and this is the thing. And I mentioned this. I had a good conversation on my podcast on the Man on Second with Todd Hollinsworth. I hope people check that out on the YouTube channel last week. And we talked a lot about, to me, and I get what you're getting at right now at this time of year, is just okay, just throw the kids out, see what they can do, type of
yeah.
thing. But we're really not completely. You could see you could see, like you say, how he looks. Does he look like he's comfortable in the field? Does he look like he can slow the game down? But this is garbage time. And it's
Yeah.
not really, no one's really, this is in football, you're down 50 points with 4 minutes to go in the game, and your fourth string quarterback throws 2 touchdown passes, and you lose 50-14. The problem is our fan base, and it's really the data cult that will just magnify the 14 late. Oh my goodness. And there's so much difference. And I brought it up with Holly about look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Been better than probably people thought. They got some nice young pieces. Diamondbacks mop the floor with them. The Padres come in, mop the floor with them. And in those games with the Padres, those 3 straight, and this was a couple of weeks ago, it was like every game Bednar choked the lead in the ninth, and they blew late inning leads, lost in extra innings. And what did that show you? The Diamondbacks and Padres are rolling into the playoffs. Both are about to be 20 over, and
They're
they were
hot.
under 500 at the deadline, basically. And it was like very obvious. As many nice little pieces as the Pirates have, they're not ready for prime time. The Marlins aren't even close to that level of playing a meaningful game. They haven't played one meaningful game. And I get they asked Norby about pressure. He goes, "Oh yeah, there's pressure." He doesn't know what this is. He's 24 years old. He's having his cup of coffee now, trying to establish himself as more. This is not anything remotely like what Jazz is doing up in New York right now. We're trying to win a division, we're trying to win a World Series. I'm on a team with Aaron Judge and Soto, and Judge is having a historical year, and Soto's remarkable, and Stanton's starting to heat up, and we can't lose because the Orioles are there. That's completely different level of baseball. That's why you don't see MVPs often on sub 500 teams. Now in 17, when Stanton won it, and I had an MVP vote, he had a hard time winning it, even as monster year as Stanton had with the 59 homers, which sadly, if he played in any other stadium, he would be part of the 60 homer club, which would help him as a potential Hall of Famer. This ballpark takes homers away from you, obviously. But Marlins are under 500, but his closest competition that year was Joey Votto and the Reds, who actually had a worse record. So Stanton getting it wasn't necessarily, and I know the data people think that we screwed that one up because homers and RBIs don't matter as much as whatever metric of the day they felt was more important. But Votto's team didn't even win more games than the Marlins. So it was like it'd been different if Votto led him to the playoffs. And I, as a voter, lean that way too. For the same reason, and no knock on Sandy Cy Young, but Cy Young in a 95 or whatever lost team, again, very great, really good year. But it's like you're winning games like, and again, they're all big league wins, so you don't really want to diminish them. But sometimes the other team came in, won the first two, it's getaway day. There's a different vibe in those games. When a team may have had a 10-game road trip and they come in, they're 9-1 or whatever, 8-1, and they go in, they get Sandy on Sunday after losing. The Marlins lose the first two. Those teams may have a Sunday lineup in. It's like they're getting out of town. It's so much different, and that's why I encourage the cult won't, because the data cult here is just all about pushing the analytics agenda. Watch all these playoff games. Watch Arizona come back from 4 runs down at Boston, and then you want to say how Bendix cooked on the AJ Puck trade, and go watch Puck in 12 pitches carve up Reeve Snyder, Casas, and Devers with 3 straight strikeouts, doing 98 and catching Casas looking at a nasty strike 3 slider. That's what Puck is playing for right now, because they're playing to go to the playoffs and trying to go deep into the playoffs. It's a lot different than getting a home run and a double in the 3rd game against the Cubs after the Cubs already won the series on a Sunday getaway day in Miami. It's just completely different. And I get it. You can only deal with the hand you're dealt. And as prospects, you're there. That's why I wish a lot of these guys, and it'll happen. All the podcasts will inflate him and make him bigger than Isan Diaz and everyone else, because this rebuild is different. And then it's going to put immense pressure on this kid. He's going to think he's more than he really is, and we don't really. And then it could stunt his development. And that's another good rant, huh? coming out
Well,
swinging.
I mean, you're right. It's a different vibe. It's a different level of baseball. I mean, it's the major leagues, but you take the Marlins Rockies in late August, and then you look in New
Two
York,
terrible teams, just terrible
2
teams.
awful teams, and now you have New York and the Orioles having a pennant race, and when they play, in September or whatnot, with the division on the line, and Jazz, Judge, Soto. I mean, it's awesome. It's what baseball is about, because ultimately, I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again, the goal is to win a World Series, and you got to put yourself in a position to win the World Series. And as we go down the stretch, as baseball fans watching the games, it's not as fun to watch the Marlins as it is to watch teams like you said, the Padres or the Diamondbacks with these comebacks. That's why, for me, watching the individual players, hopefully Norby continues this. Hopefully Stowers, gets in a groove, because the swing and miss was so bad early on, and it looked like his confidence was shot, but got a couple
Well,
hits.
that's the
But
danger of this.
and
That
that's the thing.
that's the danger. I did a little because I know the audience that's kind of tuning in. The last thing they have are their stats, because pretty much, sadly, the fan base that this is the loser is Miami. I mean, that's my frustration. If I come across as a bitter old man, sorry, Shamrock. If all you could count me on is my age, you know, something to you, because that speaks more to you and how simple and dumb you are. But it's like, because you haven't said anything I was wrong about the assessments, is this is what my passion is the destruction it does to the South Florida baseball fan, the market, the embarrassment. You go and you hear people laugh about Miami, they laugh about the Marlins, and as someone who covered them for 20 years, I get the ridicule. You know,
Mm,
as a former season ticket holder for my family, we get the ridicule. But you start looking, and this is, and I bring this player up for a reason. It's because of Tampa Bay, just like losing. A year ago, the Rays were close to a 100-win team. They had Franco, Wander Franco, which has been completely devastating. That story is
disaster.
may that just cripples that franchise, may send it back way, way back. But point being is, you had um, Yandy Diaz. Last year, Yandy Diaz was in the MVP conversation. Yandy
Yeah.
hit 330. He had 164 WRC plus. I think he was a 5 WAR player. Like I said, he hit 330 and he had a 522 slugging. So we could do the math on all that. What happened to Yandy Diaz? I think he's like 207th in WAR right now in baseball, hitting 273. At a 329 OBP compared to 410, not even a 400 slug. Did Yandy Diaz just become a terrible player? The problem
Probably not.
is his Yandy Diaz is in a weaker lineup. And when we talk about the Connor Norbies, the you know, we talk about Jazz. Look how Jazz is like hustling back. I mean, he needs Tommy John surgery, but he's rushing back from the IL to get back in the lineup because he wants to be part of what the Yankees are doing. And then he homers last night. It was an insurance run. He made an error at third, whatever. But Jazz is like excited to be on the field and contributing, and he's got 21 homers. So when you ask yourself, when you put these young players in a lineup without stabilizers, like I always bring this point up. Well, you probably remember when the Braves had Chipper. They kind of got rid of everybody but Chipper, and I think Andrew Jones was still on the team. I think those are the only two who were left. But they brought in. It was the year that Frank Core was a rookie, Brian McCann, like a lot of those guys all kind of came up together, and there was that really young core that kind of took the mantle from the Sheffields and the people that left Atlanta. But they always had Chipper, who obviously you're talking about a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest one of the greatest switch hitters of all time, clearly. And Frank Core would, like, one game we're in New York, I think we were at Chase Stadium, and it was like something. And they were playing, Marlins were playing a night game, and Braves, I guess, played a day game. I just mentioned to Jack McKeon, we're sitting in the dugout, and I'm like, man, the Braves, it's like, Frank Core with a big homer there. He goes, yes, to Frank Core, hat tip, but he goes, what happens to a team like that? And he's speaking more anecdotally. He's like, you get a guy like Chipper who gives you that 2-run double or whatever that puts you in front, takes the pressure off of Frank Core, who could now he hits a home run, it's an add-on run or an add-on 2 runs. But the anchor was Chipper to kind of take the weight off. The Marlins, I'm sure we're going to hear next year a lot of comps as they go young, and they'll say this is like the 2006 Marlins, the Joe Girardi year. I'm sure they're going to try to sell that narrative because they're going to have all these rookies that are having to play. And that was funny that year. Hanley Ramirez led off. Dan Uggla was like second. Like they're playing at Houston. Hanley got a hit first at bat. Uggla got a hit. I think there was like 8 baseballs thrown into the Marlins dugout within the first 3 innings because all these guys had their first big league hits, and everyone's like the Astros are turning around and throwing the ball back into the Marlins dugout because all these guys literally collected their first big league hits, because they're all on the field at the same time and never had a hit in the big leagues. But that team went 20 under in May, June, whatever it was. I think it was May, and ended up early September getting over 500 for a couple of games before Josh Johnson got hurt and they kind of fell apart at the end and finished under 500. But what made that team work, and I always told people this, Joe Girardi got manager of the year. He, of course, was fired when he received it. But I always said Miguel Cabrera deserved half of that manager of the year, trophy because Miguel Cabrera hit third in that lineup and hit at a high level. Like even with kids, even though they were talented players, it was like Cabrera was the anchor. He held it all together. We don't have that. We have not now. Of course, Miguel Cabrera is a generational player, but the point even being, Jake Berger, he's going to be the anchor of all this. And look, Jake Berger, by all accounts, a great guy. He's a really talented player. He's having a great second half. But all due respect, if half of that would have been the first half, they may not have been in this boat. That ties into my garbage time, stats as well. We could talk all about since the All-Star break, but when the season mattered, when the pressure's off, that's the thing. The pressure's off right now. So, but I don't think it's fair to Jake to say he's going to be the centerpiece. He actually, in my opinion, kind of has to be the guy who's traded because the De Los Santos guy and the Ramirez, the catcher, they're both first base, but more first base profiles and DH profiles than catcher. So if Norby is going to be a third, which I'm not sure that's his best position to expect. Yes, I guess he's got 20 homer, potential, but he's more of a second baseman. That's all they have are second basemen.
I wonder if they could keep him at second base because Otto Lopez was fool's gold.
Yeah, he was going to be better than Arise, right? At the time. Oh, he was crushing it. All of our insiders are saying Otto Lopez. That'll be an interesting one to follow. How Otto Lopez, how Bendix is cooking on that one.
I think part of it is just the a few minutes ago you mentioned Xavier Edwards, and I remember the first time. Remember he was called up last year, but this year he was called up for about 9 games or so, and then sent immediately back down. And I was like, why are you sending him down? Let him play. And there were people on Twitter, Marlins fans, who were embracing the rebuild from the get-go. Yep, he has a lot of holes to fix. It's good to send him down. He's got to work on them. And I swear, I'm like, you're just repeating the same. I don't know what you're even trying to say. Like, where are you basing this off of? And then he comes back from Jacksonville. After I'm looking at the stats, he's got like 8 multi-hit games in 12 games down in Jacksonville. Dude's hitting. There's nothing left to prove. Comes up, hits for the cycle. The rest is history so far this season for him. He's been great. And now the narrative is, oh, Xavier Edwards is the new Arias. Who needs Arias? We have Xavier Edwards. I'm like, weren't you the guy just saying, oh, he has a lot to work on, keep him in AAA? Like, they never can
It's
admit when they're wrong about something or
that's
when
what cults
it
do.
doesn't fit their narrative. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what the cult. That's why it's a cult.
because
And look, Xavier Edwards is second baseman. That's the problem. Norby's a second baseman. Edwards is a second baseman.
I think
He
they're
doesn't
gonna
have the
try to
arm
keep him at
strength.
short.
They have to. Only by necessity. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Everyone's out of position. They drafted
Yeah.
Morlando. Everyone's like Morlando's a corner outfielder.
Mm,
What do they get up and say the day everyone? People are texting me. This guy's a corner outfielder. We're going to try him
yeah.
at center.
That's crazy.
That and again until again. I know whatever. I always bash on Bendix, but it's like. And I said this back when they got back in 2020 when they were looking for a center fielder. And they traded for or signed whatever it was, Jonathan VR. And everyone was on
Yeah.
the Jonathan VR bandwagon because he had a 4 WAR in Baltimore playing meaningless games. That's another guy who played nothing but meaningless games because the Orioles weren't good then. And as a second baseman. And they're like, he's so athletic, we're going to put him in center field. Then you find out he's not a plus runner. He's not this or that. Like the Marlins could have put Jazz at third. All the nonsense they are wearing him out in center field. They could have put him at third. They never even thought of that. And I mean, look, and I'll go just to Norby. Is he better than Jazz? Because that's really the role. It's really he's kind of Jazz. You've
I
taken
mean, right
Jazz off
now,
your
no.
roster. Yeah, and will he ever be? I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't know. So
I
even if
think the value you
this
got
is
for him was good, though.
this is the people that like this is what's going to be lost, and this is what's going to make it really, really hard on these young guys. Is okay, your production level, even with Josh Bell not having a great year, had 18 homers or so at the time of the trade. And Sanchi is Sanchi. He's got 16 or so homers. You got guys that get at 20 homers, and maybe one of them touches 30. Maybe Berger gets there. But it's like you took that off your roster, and now you're adding guys who've never done it before. Who remember Garrett Cooper, 20 30 homer power. I think he ever hit more than 16 or 17 homers. It's over 162 is what matters. And for all our, prospect people that love to bang on a rise, oh, Edwards, much I'd rather Edwards than Luis. Well, Luis is playing either a messed up wrist or thumb.
Yeah, he's playing hurt.
6 guys in baseball with 300 batting average. He's one of them. And guess what? Every game the Padres play means a lot right now.
Oh, yeah.
And if he wasn't helping them, he wouldn't be leading off. But he's leading off. So the Padres don't look at Luis Ariz as the bitter Marlin fans who basically are hanging on to hating on Ariz. And we saw them, some of the cult, they were hoping for Jazz to get hurt. When Jazz had the great first week, oh, I hate this. I can't wait till he gets hurt, or I can't wait
It's
till he
so
goes off.
weird.
And
It's
then when
just
you
so
call them,
weird.
on it, they're like, no, I'm not. I'm just that.
I just don't get it.
So it's like,
Like, I truly don't understand it because, look, I'm the first one to say from the beginning of this year, I was very critical of the front office. I mean, you know me, Joe. Me and you both were very critical with the analytics and with the all-in approach on that, the immediate approach to tanking when you just came off a playoff berth. I mean, we've rehashed it before. But the thing with me at the same time, when the deadline happened, I knew they were going to trade a ton. Yeah, it was obvious. When Puck got traded, there was a lot of those trades. I thought Peter Bendix did an excellent job at the deadline. Do I agree with everything he's done? No. But I can sit there and say objectively, man, I think he had a great deadline in terms of
see, I
prospects and
disagree.
prospect capital. You disagree? See,
I,
I
I
thought he did
disagree.
great.
Okay. Look at it this way. You traded not. We're talking. Forget the Arise trade, which was terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
And to one of our friends
I
there
still maintain that.
who told me was like, you got a guy who needed surgery, and they're telling me surgery is minor, season-ending surgery for a 19-year-old kid who depends on his legs to have a
On his
leg
hip.
injury or a hip injury, which affects
Yeah.
speed. And then you pay the whole $10 million, and you couldn't even squeeze $1 million out of Preller. to just take them because you panicked and you did that. So let's take that trade off the table. You traded 9 players, 9 proven players. I think every one of them was part of a playoff roster, right?
Yeah.
So these guys got you there, or if we weren't on the playoff roster, they certainly, even a Braza Bonds helped you get there. You got 14 prospects for 9 established big leaguers. What's the percentage of those 14 players equaling the value they traded in those 9?
I couldn't tell you. Just wait and
The
see.
prospects are, you probably need 6 or 7 prospects to get 1, maybe 2.
Right, with the
The math
percentage
tells
that
you not
pans
all
out.
these guys are, and when are they going to click? Let's say Connor Norby becomes really good at age 28. It's 4 years from now. You're asking everyone to come to a terrible hitter's park in a culture that's probably not going to win for a while. And again, there's not one guy they got was maybe they got one pitcher that was a top 50, like close to 50 in baseball. Not that these
Snelling.
rankings mean that much. I guess the kid from San Diego, who everyone's in love with, because if all you do, you throw 5 innings in Double A, man, you're the next Blake Snell. Look, everyone looked at everyone's minor leaguers. They have the same numbers. I mean, the kid from Arizona has like 35 homers or whatever, but he's got legit power. Is he gonna? But again, we're also seeing they haven't done it at the big league level yet.
Right, I mean,
Edwards
that's the
gets hurt a lot.
risk.
That's the thing. You guys, the obsession with prospects, because all prospects, you make lists because you have numbers. Go look at like the rookie of the year guys and see what their minor league numbers were. Those guys were like hitting 330, like at 20 years old, not at 24, hitting, like 290 or 280. Eli, and one thing, at least Eli doesn't unfollow me. All the other cowards did. But he goes out about Connor Norby is bringing up his career 8, and I know Eli's great. He pumps it
Yeah,
all up.
he's great.
860, 870 career minor league OPS. I looked at like all these players that are like just fringe big leaguers that had a higher career OPS than that. It's like that's just the nature of the sport. Now we're getting a little bit more in projectability. If you have some level of success, double or triple A can equate to, some level of success in the big leagues. But there's a lot that goes on in the big leagues.
Well, it's
Everything
completely
is
different.
amped up. Everything is amped up. Yeah. Double A traditionally has been where the guys who jump from Double A to big leagues traditionally, now everything changes now. So it's even 3-4 years, it's evolved so much differently. But that would be where the Hanley Ramirez types, your really elite, toolsy guy would be, and they can make the jump to the big leagues. And Triple A would be, if you hung around there, you're kind of the up and down guy, maybe the late developing guy, guys who get, maybe come back from injury somewhere, and they kind of would populate there. So low level numbers mainly don't mean too much, or a lot of that's where you kind of see people, I mean, just think about the same people that are touting these people. So Peyton Burdick was going to be Mike Trout. So JD Orr was going to be Juan Pierre. Um, you know, we could go on. A couple of months ago, Griffin Conine and Joe Mack can't be stopped. And it's like, okay,
Well, you
well,
always
they'll
take it with
both
a grain
drop
of
to
salt.
8th or 9th. They all dropped to like 8th and 9th in the batting orders in the minor leagues when they made these trades.
I mean,
Yeah.
prospects are prospects, like you said. I mean, there's no denying that fact. The issue I think that you have that I don't have is the production at the major league level. The reason I liked what Bendix did, and I was a big fan of that trade deadline, was for what you had on the roster and looking ahead in the next couple of years, you weren't going to compete. So all the rentals, Tanner Scott was going to go. AJ Puck had years of control, so he was valuable. But what you got back for AJ Puck, Jazz Chisholm, which, there's people out there that hate Jazz. I don't know why. I loved him as a player, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Is that the major league ready guys or close to major league ready guys? That's why I hated the San Diego trade, was because you had Dylan Head, who was the headliner, no pun intended, and
Mhm.
then you had Martorella and Marcy and one more piece. Wu Sutko didn't really matter, but Dylan Head, okay, he's 19, he's 4 or 5 years away, 3 4 years, let's say, and I'm saying to myself, okay, if this is the approach the Marlins are going, this team is going to be unwatchable for the next 3 seasons, 4 seasons. And I was really upset because I'm sitting here. You trade away Arias, the main guy you get back won't contribute at all if he even makes it for another 3 seasons. So the deadline comes around, and I'm expecting the same thing. And then they trade Rogers for Norby, who I think is good, and Stowers, jury's still out on him, but two guys that are in the major league lineup. They're getting reps, they're getting at bats. For Trevor Rogers, I thought, okay, you were getting two major league ready pieces. That's awesome. De Los Santos, right on the cusp. I mean, I don't know what else he has to do in AAA. Like he's tearing it up in AAA. Will it project to the major leagues is the question. That's the risk. Same thing with the guy in the Jazz trade, Augustine Ramirez. We just don't know. They have to have at bats in the major leagues, but at least they're
This
not guys in single A, high A ball, and it's only based on projectability, if that makes sense. Like that would have
No,
been the
I hear
wrong
what you're
route.
saying. No, this is what okay, what the deadline did to me, and this is more big picture, and I hear what you're saying, and you make points. I mean, it's not like they got nothing. Obviously, they got some players that are going to be big leaguers, and some of them are going to be better than we think. Some are going to be worse than we think, and that's just kind of the nature of it. Because
It's
you
just
might
the flow
remember
of the
when
game.
go back to when Juan Soto and Victor Robles were both the big prospects in Washington. Everyone talked about Victor Robles like this and Soto like this, except for some of the people that I eventually started getting away from prospect list and some of the people that were touting it on Sirius XM or wherever. And the people I talked to were like, Soto's here. Robles is a seventh or eighth in the order hitter for me. And then what happened? And still, because the thing with as great as Juan Soto is, he still was like 20 years old. So everyone kind of, yes, the great one, the Stanton at 20, you knew was special. Bobby Witt Jr. I love one guy I had a little debate with. I was like, oh, I never thought Witt was going to be that. And I'm like, why? Well, his OPS, I said, yeah, he's like 19 in the big leagues on the bat. I was like, everybody, as I saw him play in a perfect game event, and there's like 400 golf carts all circled around with scouts in them, watching every move he made on the field when he was on that. And that was with, Jackson Holiday and all these other people in that event too. Bobby Witt Jr. was always looked at as a franchise caliber player.
Oh, he's great. He's
I
so
mean,
fun to
it's like
watch.
the great ones just jump out at you. So, point being, we don't have anything close to that. We don't
That
have anything close
franchise
to that.
altering player.
So,
Yeah.
so we don't have any cornerstone, lock them up guys. But this is what it did, and I get Bendix forced it. And he's easily getting a pass. And it gets back to the original point. This team could have contended because the bullpen they traded was a playoff caliber bullpen. But it seemed like they put everything into this to Sandy's not here, so therefore we can't compete. We don't
Mm.
have Sandy, we can't compete. And they just went to that narrative and got rid of a playoff ready. There are people around the league like, what did they just do? They had arms. They had like amazing amount of bullpen arms, and
You're
many
talking
of them
about
were
like
controlled.
before the
What they
season.
just traded. What they just traded. They had 5 or 6 better than average relievers, including one who was pitching as well as any reliever in the sport. And they had that and wasted that year. Wasted a year with outstanding bullpen. They never tried to get the lineup better. He just scaled everything back. He put himself in that position. Plus, this is a long-term plan. So if it doesn't work out in 4 or 5 years, he's under contract anyway. He gets fired. He makes a lot of money, and he moves on to being on the staff of a buddy somewhere, and probably never as a GM again. And if it works, then he's a genius. But even if it works without the resources that they pump in, this is a. I mentioned this on my podcast. He's kind of got a model to never sign a substantial free agent because WAR is their number one thing. And what do they preach? They preach internally this. They do not want anyone over 30 years old. So all the people saying, "Oh, we need Sandy. Oh, lock Sandy up." Why was Sandy? First of all, why does Sandy want to be here? And second of all, why do they want to pay him if they're not ready to win? And he's going to be over 30 in a couple of years. He's like 28 now.
Yeah.
So everything is, you can't just, get all emotional. Oh, we love Sandy. So he can't go. Okay. So we know what next year is going to be. They're going to bank on the pitching being outstanding. Like everyone coming back from injury, they can't just be good. They ought to be outstanding. And that's going to carry you. And Yuri's going to be carrying this amazing amount of pressure. And if somehow they get off to a halfway decent start, he'll feel more pressure to rush back from Tommy John. It's like, and are you going to, you basically, you had a playoff roster. You sold to people that we can't win because we don't have a farm system. But you had Xavier Edwards in your farm system. You've had a lot of these other guys that were already Dane Meyer, all these other people that were in your farm system. You could have tried to compete. So it blows away the win now thing, which he came in the door saying, eye on the now and an eye in the future. Again, I'd have less problems with this whole thing if he wouldn't have just lied and then
Yeah,
just
that
kind of
isn't something I
cover.
took issue
So,
with.
so what the deadline showed was you had the bullpen alone. Every year, they're contending teams that may not win the World Series because their bullpen may not be good enough. And they've added bullpen pieces because that's just how hard it is. You can't predict. Now, Anthony Bender's hurt and Nardi's hurt. What's these final 30 something games going to look like? Everyone's going to be breaking even more. And we don't know if Connor Norby can hold up for 162. For all the people that like to, crap all over her eyes, we know he holds up, even playing hurt. He's out there because guess what? There aren't too many teams that go into the playoffs with everybody's healthy as can. We're all fresh as can be. They're all fighting through something, nagging. Skip was part of two or so World Series teams. Everybody having to suck it up and do more. I covered the 03 Marlins and, Luis Castillo basically coming every day and just being run into the ground and somehow, ice baths and getting back on the field and doing whatever it takes. And that's how it is. It's like the Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. All those players are just on fumes. Our guys you got a bunch of rookies who have been in load management their whole life, starters who never went more than 4 innings and 5 innings. And right now, because they fired all the development people, you got minor leaguers like working out by themselves. They're like doing their own
Wow.
thing. Like
Well,
they're
that's
top minor
one
leaguers.
I wanted to ask you about because I'm not as familiar as you probably are, but I mentioned on Twitter, the Ozzo Campo firing,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at it and I do a little more research because he was with Houston and
Yeah.
he signed so many talented players internationally, from Latin America, and the Marlins get rid of him. And I said, well, this makes no sense. Like, why are you doing this? Because I immediately saw it seems like Bendix was trying to get his own guys in there. And there was a media member, um, and he told me it makes perfect sense. Bendix is getting his own guys. And I said, I understand that he's trying to get his own people in there. But also, you don't necessarily need to have every single guy your own handpicked guy. You can still have Ocampo on the staff. And he said, well, get used to it and learn to accept it because these things will continue. And I said, as a fan, I don't have to
You don't have
just
to accept
accept
anything. Yeah.
everything or anything. I'm a fan. I can be critical when I want to be critical. And it blew
Yeah.
my mind. Like, just accept it because it's gonna happen. I'm like, who? What? Like, I can be
Well, I
critical and
mean,
say if
let's
I
face it.
disagree with it.
Yes, the people that everyone's got cozy situation and they're fed stories and they just
But why
tell
did you?
whatever
I
they
still
want to say.
haven't got an answer. Like, why did you get rid of Ocampo? Like, he's had a year
Well,
and a
just
half.
just their whole when they had four assistant GMs, which is ludicrous. Um, they basically anybody that was on a contract for this year, Sherman wasn't going to fire them because if you fire them,
You
you're
lose
paying them
money,
anyway. No,
right?
well, you're not necessarily losing money, but you might as well just keep them in a transition. And that's what you do with Mike Hill. Mike Hill had 2 more years, whatever, 3 years
Very
total.
true.
And as soon as they're like, okay, he'll show Jeter around, they'll show him how to come in, show where the executive bathroom is, you know. And once they figure all that stuff out, the guy who ran the stadium, they did that too, till his contract ran out because that guy knew where everything was. Couldn't get rid of him right away. He had a couple more years on his contract because Loria did that. He extended like everybody like 3 years. So if Sherman fired him, he was going to have to pay everyone 3 years. So Loria took care of everybody, when he left, and all these people there, including scouts and so forth. Anybody that was on a 1 year deal, but they all knew they could be moved. They could be gone. Um, from what I heard, I don't know if I should even say it because I might be. I don't know how much communication Oz had with Peter. Like some people I
Like
heard
on a
saying, like,
personal
no,
level.
yeah, like they like even how much he even did this year, or this. I don't think it has happened overnight, type of thing. It wasn't like he was
Yeah.
blindsided. He was somewhere, and Jesus Ortiz, a friend of mine out in Houston, reporter. He quoted Oz, and Oz sounded as relieved as can be. And what I found telling was when he kind of noted he wanted to be part of championships and winning, and kind of if you read between the lines, it sounded more like that ain't exactly the plan here, at least the conversation there. So it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be that. And the people like a lot of the coaches they just fired in the minor leagues, no, they weren't being heard anyway. So they're going to bring in their own people. That's how many people want to come work here. But I think I noted this. At least two of them, I think, were like Division III coaches.
Mm.
But they don't. I don't know if I mentioned this. From what I heard, maybe it's not 100% still, but they the coaches don't hit fungos like to the outfielders. Everything is on pitching machines, thrown to zones and so forth. So if you're like a center fielder, they fling it from the machine to zone 2. Maybe that's why they don't touch first base because they didn't put that in the index card. Um, and so coaches are really just feed machines, and they don't their voices aren't heard anyway. So if they went and hired like Tennessee's like top assistant, which would be fine. They're not doing that. They're getting somebody from like some D3 school in Illinois that plays in 15 games in the snow a year. They're coming in and they're working with the pitchers, teaching them all those splits, and then we're wondering why their arms are blowing out. But it's like, yeah, it's yes, it clearly is. He's doing it his way,
Yeah.
like, and but doesn't mean it's the right way. And if you got a credential, doesn't mean that you have to just, you could try to inform the people a little bit more rather than, you know, uh, like it tough. Don't work in it. Don't get work like the whole. Don't get worked up over Soler. They're not going to sign him so tough. Quit bringing it up.
Right,
It's like
or the
that's
hate
kind of
for
their.
the players that leave Miami is something I just don't see. Like, you see guys leave a team and they come back and they're everybody has good things to say about him for the most part. You
Yep.
have Freddie Freeman leave Atlanta, comes back. I mean, he's always going to be loved there. You have Arias leave after taking the Marlins to the first playoff season in
Yeah, hitting
162 games in
350
20
for him.
years.
Yeah.
354, and they hate him. They hate
Yeah.
Arias. It's like it's not even like I think I don't really know. They're actively posting about him saying, compare him to Xavier Edwards. Look at this bum. I'm like, what are you doing? Same thing with Jazz. Same thing with Jazz now. It's Jazz goes to New York. He's going to have probably close 25 home runs, 30 stolen bases. I mean, he's having a very good season. Very good season.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. He says, you know what? I feel good. I feel like I'm coming back. Well, that get used to it. That's all they say. That's all he says. He's trouble. He's always lying about his injuries. I'm like, what do you have against Jazz? You know, the Jazz Gallon trade from a few years ago. I said, look, I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it objective. I would have rather have Gallon. I would have taken Gallon in a heartbeat right now. Do I say it was a bad trade? No, because Jazz turned out to be a productive big leaguer. The Marlins didn't necessarily get the better end of it, but it wasn't a horrible trade like people make it out to be. And they keep criticizing him. And it's sad. It's like, I love Jazz on this team. And it's sad that he's not on it. But all I can do is go and hope for the future. I got to hope Augustine Ramirez pans out, Jared Cerna, the rest of them.
No doubt. That's what we're left with. And it puts undue pressure on these players. And I think I've had the discussion before. I know we can't go more than an hour, right? So we got kind of,
we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah. It's you inflate somebody, and then when they struggle, Jonah Bride, oh my goodness, then if he struggles, got Connor Norby, and when he struggles, he'll be like, well, look at the kid in Double-A, or this kid had 3 hits, and oh my goodness, this pitcher's struggling, but this pitcher's not. It's always that. And as someone who lived this, no one was more embedded than doing this and writing 4 stories a day. That's the thing. People your age, like I was writing 4 stories a day. So I didn't need to go on Twitter to tell everyone how I thought. You could read what I wrote.
Right.
So, and it's like, and I spelled it out, Now you get 1 story a day. You don't, like, we would have easily, and MLB.com would have loved that story of the not touching first, only for the bizarreness of it. I'm talking about the fundamental end of it, but just write about that and just kind of break that down. It's stuff that that comes with Jeremiah. This is kind of the nut of it and the root of a lot of my frustration. Not just as, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not part of the inner circle. Still card carrying BBWA member and could go to any game I want. And I've been asked many times, and trust me, they wouldn't mind me being there just to kind of balance it. Because
you should go back there and say what's up.
Because but it's like, for what? For what, to hear group settings and ask one question, you can't ask a follow-up. You ask about too much specifics. Back when we'd have conversations with Mattingly or any of the managers before, it's a conversation in the weeds baseball. It's what I would do. The TV people are like, oh gosh, I want to know if they had a chicken salad for lunch. It's like, that's what happens when you've made the game all fluff. You have all these people. It drives me nuts. So another game I was watching the other day, they're so consumed with showing anything but between the 15 seconds between pitches is too much downtime for the next generation. They flip away, like there's 5 seconds to go on the clock, and they flip away to some. This isn't the Marlins game, to some other, some stupid, someone eating a hot dog or something, and they come back, and we missed a swing of a home run.
Mm.
And I'm like, this is what's happening. Everyone in baseball, they're so consumed. They don't believe in the product. So you're like, the guy's like rounding the bases, and it comes back, and the ball's in the stands, and they flash to home. And we're like, why'd you just cut away? He's almost in his delivery to show some stupid highlight, and we missed the swing. And then on the replay, after 20 seconds of the whole go to the the lock to the dugout and put the stupid crap on, and everyone doing all what they're doing, and then they come back and they show the home run. It's like, why bother? I might as well just wait for it to be posted on Twitter by then. But that's kind of the mentality. So this gets you into, you have a organization that pumps data at you. If you watch Marlin games, all you hear, 34% chance of this, 23% chance, but no one talks the sport.
Mm.
And if you do talk it, they don't want to hear you. You're not part of that. Well, what's happened is you got no fans. You have no energy, no excitement. You're promoting, you lose five in a row and you promote something about the 2026 Caribbean Series or World Baseball Classic, or you have another Bark at the Park or another Heritage Night. You know, it's like that's their priority because you have a marketing department that doesn't know baseball, and you got baseball people who know analytics, they don't really know baseball, and baseball people who are going to be pushed aside. The biggest, why isn't anyone asked about Skip's situation? That's off limits. I know Skip personally won't talk about it, but media tough. It's not his job to say I'm leaving, but
Yeah,
it's
no deep questions.
but nobody's like saying is he back? Is he for sure gone? Is he, what's going on? Instead, you get the radio people sitting around going, and I found this. Look, I know they have a tough job to do, but to insinuate that these guys have something to prove in this final month, and I'm looking, they're so much hungrier than everyone. That's such a Bush League comment. That's like insulting 20. You know who wants to win more than anyone? The
Hmm.
players on the Chicago White Sox. You think they want to lose 120 plus games, be known as the worst team in the history of baseball? They're going to try hard. They're going to show effort. We're talking about the big leagues. If that's not the big leagues, I want no part of it. If you're sitting around all excited, just or we got a bunch of gritty kids who, and I get it, you're a big fan, you want to watch them play, but those who are selling the thing don't insult the league as if the guys on other teams like you tell me Aaron Judge doesn't want to win. I mean, he has to be more gritty. Everyone wants to win. They shouldn't even be employed if you're saying that at the big league level. It's understood. If you're a beat writer, you should be like talking about their steps to winning instead of this is what they want me to say. And if I say everything, then I could get Skip on my podcast or Bendix could come on my podcast. That's not that's not really their role. And I know we got to get out of here and I could kind of rant on. But again, look, my beef isn't with the players. I'm going to make that clear. My beef, for the most part, isn't even with Skip and his staff, even though they had a bad brain fart. Is what are we packaging and selling Miami? And I see some people, he has a vision. So Peter has a vision. Well, he might have a vision, but somebody else is getting rings. And if that's really not, what it's about, do you have the resources? Do you have the people in place? And and I get it. If it sounds like I'm like the one guy that lights a fire in them in the media, that they could go prove me wrong if that motivates you. But enough of just selling a bad product and just dressing it up and acting like, I never tried to do that. For all the people who call me a homer, a mouthpiece, I never try to just deliberately mislead people. When they weren't good, I let you know they weren't good. And you can get frustrated over the course of that year, and I could say that, but it wasn't like, and I never accepted it. It wasn't my job to, but I'm not the one that traded those people. I'm not the one that traded Stanton or Yelich. You know, these guys did, and they're selling. It just the problem is these kids are being put in a really tough spot. And again, how does this make Miami look? How does this make South Florida look? I cover high school baseball players who want no part of being part of this team. They yes, you want to be in the big leagues, but they're not even Marlin fans. And we got some of the best baseball in the country right in their backyard. And the big league club should be the bar and it should be the excitement. As far as I know, they didn't. We had 3 state champions here from South Florida high school teams. None were invited to go to Marlins Park. Tampa Jesuit beat American Heritage, our own from Plantation. Within a week, they were at a Rays game being honored before the game. That speaks to what they think about, the youth and the fan base here in Miami. With that, I think I gave you enough for a quite interesting, and hope we get well over 100 views on this one.
Absolute smoke, Joe. Absolute smoke today. I mean, you went off and never change. Never change,
Yeah.
Joe. I'm gonna put this out there as soon as I can today, and let's see what people say. Because at the end of the day, we're gonna see what Marlins State of the Marlins Part 4. And there'll be another one. We got 5 weeks left of the season, so I'm sure we're gonna talk
End of
again. And
September, we could revisit. Yep.
yeah, exactly. But thank you again, Joe, for coming on.
Okay. Anytime, buddy. Take care.
All right, let's go fish.